Scholars, Assalamu alaikum, good afternoon. Welcome in this session. Today we are going to discuss the role and design of election management bodies. Our discussion is based on a research paper which is titled as From Nominal to Substantive Democracy: The Role and Design of Election Management Bodies. This paper is written by Michael Treblecock and Purvi Chitalkar. They are associated with University of Toronto, and this paper was published in the Law and Development Review in 2009. So keep in mind it was published in 2009. So it is not very fresh, but it is a very good survey of election commissions from different regions in the world, as you will see as we proceed. So, first of all, Pakistan. The authors discuss Pakistan's election commission. The example of Pakistan shows how the makeup of a commission affects its performance. In Pakistan, the election commission is made up of judges. This helped keep the commission separate from politics. It also increased public trust in the institution. But in the 2008 elections, this same setup caused problems. People started to doubt the Commission's independence. The state of emergency in Pakistan ended just one day before the campaign started. During the emergency, many judges, including the Chief Justice, were removed by the government. At that time, Musharraf was the president. Later, these judges took new oaths under a special law called the Provisional Constitutional Order (PCO) 2007. Because of this, they were seen as being close to President Musharraf and the former ruling parties. This situation weakened the independence of the Election Commission. Then the authors discuss Indonesia. Indonesia tried a new way to make its election commission more transparent. The idea was to include members from different political parties in the commission. This plan did not work well. In 1999, Suharto's Golkar party lost power. After this, Indonesia held its first open elections in over 40 years. The election process faced serious problems. The main issue was the weak election management system. The 1999 election law allowed all 48 political parties to have a representative on the General Election Commission, KPU. KPU is Indonesia's General Election Commission. This made the system slow and difficult to manage. Many party representatives used their positions for their own party's benefit. They did not focus on fairness and accountability. After the election, reforms were introduced to fix these problems. In 2000, the law was changed to remove political party members from the KPU. The new rules made the KPU independent and neutral. Only people who were not part of any political party or the civil service could join the new election commission. Along with other reforms, such as creating a corruption eradication commission, democracy in Indonesia became stronger. The 2004 and 2009 elections were later considered free and fair by international observers. Afghanistan. Afghanistan held a presidential election in 2009. The election took place during violence and fear. Many people did not vote. In some provinces, turnout was only 10%. In some districts, no one voted at all. The Taliban warned voters that their ink stained fingers would be cut off. About 400 attacks happened on election day. The Election Complaints Commission found strong proof of fraud. It ordered a partial recount of votes. Many reports said ballot boxes were filled with fake votes for the current president. At that time, Hamid Karzai was the president. For fake voter cards were also used. Some people voted for others, a practice called proxy voting. The election was managed by the Independent Electoral Commission. The Electoral Complaints Commission started checking hundreds of fraud complaints. Latin America. The examples of Costa Rica, Chile, and Uruguay show why election commissions are important. These countries set up independent election commissions between the 1920s and 1940s. The goal was to remove government control over elections. After that, elections became more open and fair. Political competition in these countries has stayed active and healthy. They are well known for holding regular, clean, and strongly contested elections. Number one, Costa Rica. Costa Rica is a great example of a country with a strong election commission. The commission has a very wide range of powers. It is treated as the fourth branch of government. Its funding and member terms are protected by the Constitution. The Constitution created the Supreme Electoral Tribunal (SET). The SET organizes elections, counts votes, and announces results. These are the three basic functions of the SET in Costa Rica: organizes elections, counts votes, and announces results. It also interprets all constitutional and legal rules related to elections. Before passing any new election law, the Legislative Assembly must first consult the SET. The state helps political parties with election expenses. So the state provides funds for contesting elections to the political parties. To get this support, parties must explain their spending to the SET. Because of these broad powers, the SET is highly respected in Costa Rica because it also provides money to the political parties for elections. It has strengthened public trust in the election process. Just creating independent election bodies is not always enough for fair elections. Often, those in power still find ways to control or misuse these institutions. Peru. In Peru, the constitution set up an independent system to run elections and count votes. But President Fujimori managed to take control of these institutions. Fujimori also changed the constitution to stay in power for 3 5-year terms in Peru. The structure of the election bodies made this manipulation easier. The National Electoral Board (NEB) was led by a Supreme Court judge. During Fujimori's time, the judiciary was under the control of the government. Even though the constitution said election bodies were independent, they still relied on the government for money. The elections in 1995 and 2000 had many problems and irregularities. International observers criticized these elections for not being free or fair. Still, the election bodies supported the president. As a result, Fujimori won a third term in 2000. Nicaragua. Nicaragua also shows how election bodies can be misused. The Supreme Electoral Council (CSE) is supposed to be an independent election authority, but President Daniel Ortega used it to limit opposition participation. This weakened democracy in the country because the president was weakening the opposition, and for this purpose, he was using the state institutions. In June 2008, the CSE said two opposition parties did not complete their paperwork correctly. Because of this, those parties were not allowed to take part in the elections on technical grounds. The rule was applied unfairly. Other small parties with the same mistakes were still allowed to stay on the ballot. This showed clear bias in favor of the president. Venezuela also faced problems with its election body. The so called Independent Election Commission was controlled by the president in power. In 2004, a constitutional referendum was held to decide whether President Hugo Chavez should be removed from office. The process was openly influenced by Chavez's government. The National Electoral Council (CNE) acted like a tool of the government. The constitution said the CNE should be independent and non-political, but three of its members supported the government and two supported the opposition. The board rejected the recall petition by a 3 to 2 vote. The opposition then filed another recall petition. During the process, the CNE worked in ways that weakened the election's fairness. Recall petitions in some countries, the constitutions provide for recall. Recall means that it is uh, impeachment. Recall means that when it means the people put a petition, put an application in front of a state institution that this person does not enjoy the trust of the majority and he or she should be removed from the office. So if the person loses the referendum in recall, the office is gone. This is recall. So during the process, the CNE worked in ways that weakened the election's fairness. Just a few days before the vote, it dismissed polling officials and randomly chose new ones. The government also restricted international observers. Domestic observer groups were not allowed to monitor the election. The referendum is remembered as Venezuela's worst run election. So it was under Hugo Chavez, and Hugo Chavez was succeeded by Maduro, who is now in American captivity. It badly violated voters' rights and fairness. Haiti. Haiti's election experience shows why a permanent election body is important. The 1995 elections had many problems. There were issues with organization. mistakes in voting and counting, and even some violence in Haiti. The 1997 parliament elections were even worse. Elections were managed by temporary bodies called Provisional Electoral Councils, CEPs, in Haiti. Most of the problems came from the failures of these councils. Many people believe the main issue was that the councils were temporary. In just 10 years, 9 different councils were formed. Some were even changed during different rounds of the same election. So it is manipulation actually. The government often dissolved these councils whenever it wanted. Because of this instability, elections in Haiti lost credibility and consistency. Mexico. Some developing countries with past election problems have made reforms that worked well. Mexico is a good example of this. For about 70 years, one party, the Institutional Revolutionary Party (PRI), controlled politics and the election system. For about 70 years, this party controlled Mexican politics and the election system of Mexico. In 1996, Mexico introduced big reforms to make elections fairer. The reforms gave more power and independence to the Federal Electoral Institute (IFE). They also strengthened the Federal Electoral Tribunal (TEPJF). Federal Electoral Tribunal. The new IFE was run by citizen councillors chosen by agreement among political parties. Most of these councillors were academics. So, academics, professors were appointed councillors in the election commission in Mexico. The IFE became like a fourth branch of the government. It managed key tasks such as dividing campaign funds and checking how the media covered campaigns. These reforms made elections fairer and more transparent. The 1997 elections were considered free, fair, and credible. The importance of these reforms was seen again in the 2006 presidential election. Philip Calderon won by a very small margin, just 0.56 percentage points against Andre Manuel Lopez Obrador. Obrador claimed the election was unfair and demanded a full recount. He also led large protests across the country. The TEPJF reviewed the case and ordered a recount of over 11,000 ballots. In September 2006, the TEPJF confirmed that the election was fair. Calderon was declared the winner. Obrador still rejected the results and called himself the legitimate president. He even suggested creating a parallel government, but his movement soon lost public support. Even so, the fair handling of this crisis showed how strong election institutions helped protect democracy in Mexico. Now, Africa. After first we discussed South Asia, then we discussed Latin America, and now Africa. First, Ghana. The 1992 and 1996 elections in Ghana show how good election management can help democracy. It not only ensures free and fair elections but also builds trust in the election process. In 1992, Ghana ended the ban on political parties. Presidential elections were held. Opposition parties said the elections were unfair and rigged. Because of this, they boycotted the parliamentary elections in December. The National Democratic Congress (NDC) then easily won those elections. In 1996, the Electoral Commission changed its approach. It focused on building trust and fairness among all parties. The Commission created the Inter Party Advisory Committee to handle party concerns openly. Complaints from the 1992 elections were carefully reviewed. A new voter list was prepared to include everyone fairly. Both government and opposition party agents worked together at registration centers. Observers agreed that the 1996 elections were fair and credible. The Electoral Commission's efforts helped strengthen democracy and public confidence in Ghana. Next, Botswana. Botswana is another good example of fair and effective election management. Its election system has earned trust at home and abroad. People are generally satisfied with how elections are run. Voter education in Botswana is very strong. The Independent Election Commission prepares a voter guidebook. The book explains the purpose of elections, how to register, and how to vote. This guidebook explain these three things: purpose of the elections, how to register as a voter, and how to cast vote. It also includes information about parties, information about candidates, and information about their leaders. The register includes. The Constitution of Botswana has many safeguards to protect the Commission's independence. Members are chosen by the Judicial Service Commission. They are selected from a list of neutral people recommended by an all party conference. The chairman of the commission is a judge. The judge is also appointed by the Judicial Service Commission. The commission gets its funds directly from the consolidated fund, not from the government. The consolidated fund. You know, in Islamabad, when I worked with the National Assembly Secretariat, one day there was an additional secretary, and we discussed how the National Assembly gets its budget. So I was surprised to know the additional secretary told me that there is a consolidated fund in Islamabad. All the government revenue is collected in that consolidated fund. I think it is AGPR. So the National Assembly first uh, appropriates or decides its portion of the fund for its budget for the next year, and the remaining amount is handed over to the executive, the prime minister and its cabinet, to run the affairs of the country. So this way parliament has an upper hand over the government. Parliament is sovereign, independent, and it has a check on the government. So this is what is being discussed here with reference to Botswana. The commission in Botswana gets its funds directly from the consolidated fund, not from the government. So it shows the independence of the commission. It has also set up a party liaison committee in every constituency. This helps political parties communicate and solve issues peacefully. Because of these measures, the Election Commission is respected by voters and political parties. South Africa. South Africa is one of the best examples of a successful independent election commission. The 1994 elections were the country's first non racial elections. Both the 1994 and 1999 post apartheid national elections had some technical problems. Still, everyone accepted the results as fair and legitimate. This was mainly because the Independent Election Commission was trusted by the people. It was seen as independent, fair, and representative of the new South Africa. The Constitution created the IEC as a permanent and independent body. The Commission's budget is approved by Parliament and audited by the Auditor General. The Auditor General's office is also constitutionally independent, ensuring financial freedom for the IEC. A major goal was to protect the IEC from interference by the former apartheid government. You know, in South Africa, there was a minority government run by the whites. It was a minority government and it oppressed the blacks who were in majority. And there was a rebellion against the whites and their government. And Nelson Mandela became a famous leader of the rebellion movement. Ultimately, they won their freedom from the whites. So the previous white regime is called the apartheid regime or apartheid government. A major goal was to protect the IEC from interference by the former apartheid government. The Electoral Commission Act clearly states that the IEC must work without political pressure, without government pressure. Members of the Commission must be neutral, they must be respected individuals, and they must not be linked to any political party. So, the members of the Commission should be independent, neutral, and respected individuals. For transparency, some members from the international community are also included. To prevent misuse of power, special electoral courts were created. These courts review all IEC decisions to ensure fairness and integrity. Voters, opposition parties, and international observers widely agreed that the elections held by the IEC were fair and free. Now, after Africa, Central and Eastern Europe, Poland and Hungary. Poland and Hungary are new democracies that came after the end of communism. Both countries chose to have independent election commissions. In Poland, the National Election Commission manages all elections. The NEC includes three judges from the Constitutional Tribunal, three from the Supreme Court, and three from the Supreme Administrative Court. So, this way, the NEC includes nine judges. Poland has a long tradition of an independent judiciary. Because of this, people have a high level of trust in how elections are managed. Recent elections in Russia, especially the 2007 presidential elections, were called unfair and non competitive by Freedom House. The ruling party, United Russia, controlled the whole election process. Opposition parties were not allowed to compete freely. They had no access to major media or government resources. Government resources were used to support United Russia. Earlier elections in Russia also had problems. Even though Russia has been a democracy since 1991, Freedom House rates it as not free. Not free means it is not a democracy. One main reason for weak elections is that the electoral commissions are not independent. Local election commissions depend on local administration for help and support. Many election officers also work for local government departments. This makes the election process less independent. Every candidate can appoint one non voting member to election commissions to ensure transparency. But most candidates do not do this because they lack funds or supporters. To make elections better, reforms are needed. Election commissions should not depend on local administrations. Clear rules should stop local officials from taking part in election management. Belarus. The 2004 parliamentary election in Belarus is a clear example of poor election management. The election had many serious problems and irregularities. In Belarus, district election commissions removed several registered candidates just days before voting. The reasons for removing them were weak and unfair. When appeals were made to the Central Election Commission, all appeals were rejected. There were no checks to stop people from voting more than once. Local administrations handled voter registration, but there was no national voter list. Because of this, voter registration could not be checked properly. The whole system of election management was poorly designed. The government had strong control over who was appointed to the commissions. The Central Election Commission had 12 members. The president appointed six of them. So it simply means the president uh, has a lot of influence. He appoints his own favored people. Many members also worked in government offices. The election laws did not ensure fairness or transparency. There was no balance between government and opposition members in the commission. It means the government had more members in the commission. The election officials used laws in a biased way to help the government. The rule that the election commission must work independently was ignored. Lastly, Middle East. Democracy is not the main system of government in the Middle East. Most countries in the region are ruled by authoritarian regimes. There are 21 countries in the Middle East. According to the Economist Intelligence Unit's Index of Democracy, Israel and Palestine are called flawed democracies. They are democracies, but they are flawed. Lebanon, Turkey, and Iraq are described as hybrid regimes. Hybrid means they are in between authoritarianism and democracy. So they are not democracies as yet. All the other countries are labeled as authoritarian regimes in the Middle East. Lebanon. Lebanon holds elections, but they are mostly symbolic. Freedom House does not see Lebanon as an electoral democracy. There are several reasons for this problem. The main issue comes from Lebanon's unfair electoral laws. These laws are based on religious and group inequalities. Because of this, free and fair elections are not possible. Electoral districts are drawn in unfair ways to help current leaders win again. The Ministry of Interior controls and supervises the elections. There is no independent body to manage the elections. This makes the election process biased and unclear. There is also no proper system to handle election campaign complaints. Iran. Iran became a nominal democracy after ending its monarchy in 1979. The constitution allows for an elected president and parliament. However, the real power lies with the supreme leader, an unelected group called the Council of Guardians controls elections. This Council of Guardians decides who can run for office and approves election results. The Ministry of Interior manages the elections. The Council of Guardians supervises the whole process. The Supreme Leader appoints half of the 12 members of the Council. The Supreme Leader of Iran appoints half of the 12 members of the Council of Guardians. So it means the Supreme Leader has a lot of influence over the Council of Guardians. He also has control over key appointments in the Ministry of Interior. So, Ministry of Interior is also under the control of the Supreme Leader, and the Ministry of Interior conducts the elections, holds the elections. In the 2009 presidential election, protests erupted after results were disrupted. The losing candidate Mir Hossein Muswi claimed the election was rigged. He asked the Council of Guardians to cancel the results. The council did a partial recount and confirmed Mahmoud Ahmadinejad as the winner. Still, protests and unrest continued in Iran until elections are managed by an independent and neutral body. Iran's election process will remain weak in legitimacy and trust. Egypt. Egypt has made some changes to its election system in recent years. Yes, some of the people have joined on the Google Meet later. So let them know on WhatsApp group that they can join us on YouTube. Jaffer, you just type a message on WhatsApp group that we are having class on YouTube. So Egypt has made some changes to its election system in recent years, but it is still not a real democracy. Before 2005, presidential elections were not competitive at all. Only one candidate was nominated and confirmed by parliament. Parliament was controlled by President Hosni Mubarak's National Democratic Party. After that, a public vote was held in the form of a yes or no referendum. These referendums were often manipulated. Mubarak usually won with 93 to 98% of the votes. In 2005, Egypt changed its constitution to allow multiple candidates for president, but the changes did not create real competition. Opposition candidates could only run if their party was licensed for at least 5 years ago. So, 5 years gestation time was required to compete in the elections, to contest the elections. Their party also needed at least 5% of seats in both houses of parliament. It was another requirement. The opposition parties also needed to list at least 5% of seats in both houses of parliament in order to be able to contest the elections. This made it very hard for small opposition parties to take part in elections. Independent candidates also faced strict rules. They needed support from at least 250 elected members of both houses. Just look at the requirements. An independent candidate needed support from at least 250 elected members of both houses of the Egyptian parliament to contest the elections. So almost impossible for a new, particularly for a new candidate. Since Mubarak's party controlled both houses, it was almost impossible for any independent opposition candidate to compete. The Egyptian constitution gives the judiciary power to supervise elections. After the constitutional changes, judges tried to use this power fully and have full control over elections. The government made only a surface level change. Judges were placed in charge of every polling station. Voting was spread over several days, so judges could travel across the country. But in reality, this law did not stop election manipulation. The cheating was simply done outside polling stations where judges had no control. In 2005, constitutional amendments also created a Presidential Electoral Commission (PEC). The commission was made up of current and former judges, but its independence was weak because half of its members were chosen by the ruling NDP controlled parliament. The PEC had full power to approve candidates, manage elections, and count votes. As expected, these changes did not bring real political improvement in Egypt. The 2005 presidential elections again ended with Hosni Mubarak's easy victory. In 2006, another reform wave began to replace judges with a new election commission. The government claimed it would be independent and neutral. However, many still doubt whether it was a real step toward democracy or just another way to control elections. So, it was a comprehensive survey of the uh, role and makeup of electoral management bodies, election management bodies in various parts of the world, including South Asia, Southeast Asia, Latin America, Africa, Central Europe, Eastern Europe, and then the Middle East. So I am closing here the YouTube, and I join you on the Google Meet.